So there's these two drunks walking down the street, and they encounter a third drunk. And they say, "Excuse me, mister, can you settle an argument for us?" And the third drunk says, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "Can you look up in the sky and tell us, is that the sun or the moon up there?" And the third drunk says, "I'm sorry, mate, I'm not from round here." The great thing about drunk jokes is that when you run out, you can just look for Irish jokes and replace Irish with drunk. Okay, trigger warning. This episode we are talking about triggers. We're not actually, no trigger warning. Fuck that shit. The whole point of this video is that triggers are your own responsibility. So let's do it. No warning. We're going in raw. Brothers, sisters, comrades and friends, welcome to Bat Country. So, I was walking to work the other day. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I walked past this closed bar, and I saw this sign. And it made me feel feelings, and I want to talk about them. So look at this sign for a moment. This is not just a piece of paper printed out and stuck in a bar window, and it's not a clever little bit of decorative art that you put up on a bar wall or something. This is etched into the glass, right? Someone paid money for this message to be conveyed to people walking past. If you can't read it clearly, it says, "If you need a sign to drink tonight, this is it." And I'm going to pause for a moment because I want to know if my own reaction to it is justified. So what do you think? What does this make you feel? Leave it in the comments. Pause the video or whatever you have to do. I have opinions about this kind of thing, and I'm going to share them. And I need to know after I've published this video whether my opinions are correct or not. So let's talk first about what this is doing. What is it saying and who is it appealing to? Whoever it was who paid a lot of money to get this piece of messaging etched into glass probably didn't have recovering alcoholics in mind when they did it. And that's indicative of the attitude of the wider world towards the plight of alcoholics, is that the world is hostile to us, and how we choose to operate and navigate that world and maintain our sobriety in the face of really dumb obstacles like this is really what defines our sobriety. I saw this and it stopped me in my tracks enough to take a photograph of it for a couple of reasons. It is just such a blunt, shameless message. Even for non-alcoholics, I have a feeling that if you put this message in the center of, like, I don't know, London or Berlin or New York or something, even completely random non-alcoholics walking past would be like, "Eesh, ooh, I don't know about that. That's a bit much, isn't it? That seems a bit egregious, a bit unnecessary." So it's not appealing to kind of normal drinkers. And I don't think it is directly or deliberately appealing to alcoholics, because you don't need to work this hard to encourage an alcoholic to take a drink, right? So who is it appealing to? Is it appealing to just dumb people who like, funny t-shirts and that kind of thing? T-shirts that say things like, "Don't abuse alcohol, just enjoy it. If found sober, return to bar. Instant fun, just add alcohol," that kind of thing. Is that what this is tapping into? And if so, why? My contention is that this is not just an ugly message, it's also just bad marketing, but that's a side issue. Let's talk about triggers then, because this certainly triggered a feeling in me. Triggers, for the last 10 years or so, have been vehemently protected, but also have been given a bit of a bad reputation by their use in gender politics and stuff like that. We have to be careful of people's triggers. What a trigger actually is anything that activates a thought or a feeling or an emotion. That's all it is. A trigger is something that activates a thought or a feeling or an emotion. Everything is a trigger. And here's the thing that I want you to take away from this video. If you take nothing else away, I understand. Take this away. The trigger does not pour the drink. The trigger doesn't pour the drink. For the whole time that I've been sober, and in fact for time before I was sober, I have been of the position, and still am, that triggers are your own responsibility. You are responsible for your triggers and how you respond to them and how you react to them and how you've built your life to avoid them if necessary. I have found myself becoming more militant about this position in sobriety. You should be free to say whatever it is that you want to say, should you feel the compulsion to say it. However, we all have an obligation to be decent people too. And to understand that, yes, we have freedom of speech. However, that freedom comes with responsibility. And that the things that we say and do have consequences. And that we don't just get to disown them as soon as those have left our mouths, right? That we all have the freedom to express ourselves in any way that we see fit, but we also have a responsibility to do as little harm to each other as possible, to not be deliberately provocative, deliberately hurtful if the situation doesn't warrant it. And that's true of alcohol triggers too. So, occasionally, roughly about once a week or so, someone in my comments will call my content triggering. Or some other sober content creator might accuse me of being triggering as a kind of underhanded way to criticize me, that kind of thing. And that's all fine. I'm well aware that the things that I say, especially in my darker videos, will have an emotional response on some of the viewership. And I have made my peace with that. That there will always be some people who will find the discussion of alcohol and its consequences triggering. But I draw the line when they accuse me or accuse anybody of being the cause of their drinking. I drank because of this. I drank because of something that you said. That is bullshit. It's absolute nonsense. Shameful, cowardly, excuse-making nonsense. Because our triggers are our responsibility, and it is an exercise in futility to blame the world around us, to externalize our inner chaos, and then blame it for causing the drinking. It's just not the way it really works. So how does it really work? Well, the brain is a pattern-finding machine, right? So we are born with a number of kind of pre-programmed applications in our brain, a few kind of neural pathways which are predisposed to spotting particular patterns, right? We all, for example, human faces. We all have a kind of intuitive genetic predisposition towards spotting human faces. It's called pareidolia. And there's an underlying mechanism in our brains for spotting the features of a human face. That's why we see, faces on the moon and on Mars, or in the shadows, or in drapes and curtains and that kind of thing. It's perfectly normal. We also tend to spot things like symmetry, because it's a good measure of the strength, the structural integrity, or the health of a thing. And we spot rhythm and repetition very naturally. All of these things are kind of pre-programmed. There are existing faculties in our brains for doing it. A trigger works on a similar premise. Since we're all kind of wired to find meaning in coincidence, we see the faces in the clouds, or we see lucky numbers, or we see signs everywhere, right? And when you have spent a long time thinking obsessively about alcohol, you tend to spot the signs in the real world. You spot pub signs before you spot an advertising sign, for example. You will find, you get kind of tunnel vision in your hearing, and you'll hear other people talking about drinking. And all of these are triggers of a sort, but that's because we are pattern-seeking animals, and we are particularly susceptible to things that we're thinking about regularly, because they have relevance. I think I have to go and get my cat. One moment. Everybody, meet Lumi. So we tend to notice the signs and signifiers of alcohol. We only notice the things that really confirm what it is that we want in the first place. But the truth is, addiction doesn't want a reason. It just wants an excuse. That's what I think a trigger really is. A trigger is permission. Permission to do the thing that you wanted to do anyway. Is it any surprise that people drink on it because of a trigger when they already wanted to drink? We spot triggers because we're already thinking about drinking. And that's why that sign on the window, if you're looking for a reason to drink tonight, this is it, is actually very accurate. Because it is accidentally saying something very profound, which is, if you are looking for permission, you're going to find it. You'll always find it. And that's where triggers can become useful in longer term sobriety, is that when you recognize a trigger, try to see it for what it really is, which is an underlying desire that was already there. Usually the trigger is the very last part of the process, or at least the last part before actually taking a drink. If you experience a trigger, or if something triggers a craving to drink in you, then perhaps that should make you think, well, I definitely shouldn't drink because you want it. It's so easy to say, perhaps if you're recovering from a relapse and someone asks you why you had that first drink, it's so easy to say, well, for example, it was a rainy day, and rainy days always make me want to drink. And whether that's true or not, it is a really shitty reason. The rain triggered you to drink. Just listen to it out loud, how ridiculous that sounds. Because it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what the external force is on your drinking. Because mostly, alcoholism is internal. And that trigger is not really a trigger. It's just a pattern spotting mechanism for an already existing desire. The craving was already there. The thing did not start the craving. You were already craving it, and you manifested a trigger for yourself. And all the trigger is an excuse. Now that said, the same day yesterday, walking... This is a weird example, right? But walking, after I saw that writing on that bar window, I was coming around the front of my house, and a car drove past. And its number plate was KLL4LL. Kill all. And I wonder if my problem wasn't alcoholism and was rather some kind of schizophrenia or some violent compulsion. How likely it is I would have seen that as a sign to kill everyone. Because if I was of such a mind to interpret that sign as a command to kill everyone, I think it's likely that the compulsion to kill everyone had come first, and that the number plate I saw on the car was simply a manifestation of a pre-existing compulsion. That is true of alcohol triggers too, right? If you see a sign, or even if you hear a person telling you to drink, and you choose to drink because of it, I believe that choice to drink was made before the trigger was encountered. Long enough into sobriety, there is good news. That long enough into sobriety, you start, or this has happened to me recently, I've started using triggers and weird cravings and urges instead of as reasons to drink, but as kind of, they make me remember why not to, and that I'm still not safe to take my foot off the gas in sobriety. And that's a long way of saying that the trigger is not really the most dangerous part. It's only the most visible. After all, a craving is just a kind of internal discomfort, an internal experience. It's not a command. You don't have to give in to a trigger just because it's a trigger. You don't have to cave into a craving just because it's a craving. It's not where the story ends. A lot of recovery and sobriety is about learning to let those cravings, those triggers pass without acting on them. And they lose power over time and with repetition. And I'm going to double down on my opinion about triggers being our responsibility. Because the problem with us alcoholics is we think the world is the problem, when really the problem is within us. We just want to blame the world, just want to externalize all of our suffering all the time and hope that some external force is also going to save us. And it's not the way it works. Salvation lies within. The world is quite indifferent to our place within it, especially as alcoholics. The world is inanimate. It's neither trying to catch us out nor trying to help us. It's doing neither. It's indifferent, impartial. And a lot of what we think are triggers around us is just projection. That's all it is. It's a projection of a desire that was already there. But that doesn't mean that we can avoid triggers entirely, right? Just because the world is indifferent. It is occasionally hostile to us. But we should not be trying to change the world around us to suit us. As far as I'm concerned, as a recovering alcoholic, I am the one with the problem. It is incumbent on me to make myself fit into the world better, rather than try to force the world to fit better to me. It's almost selfish, like alcoholically selfish, to expect to try to operate in the world without obstacles, without triggers, without external forces acting upon us. It's unrealistic to live like that. The goal should be to become someone who is not controlled by their triggers, to become someone who can live in the world comfortably in the face of opposition, rather than trying to hide from all triggers by locking themselves away in a darkened room. And even that is flawed, because if you're an alcoholic like me, then the darkened room is a trigger, because that's where we spend most of our time drinking. So nowhere's safe. And it's better to just kind of embrace that and thicken your skin up a little against the coarseness of the world. And triggers get easier in time. In fact, every time you experience a trigger that you don't act on, it kind of creates a new pathway in your brain, the safe solution is reinforced, a new pattern is reinforced in your brain. And over time, you'll find yourself becoming less and less susceptible to triggers in the first place. Okay, thank you very much for watching. If you like this kind of thing, please do like and subscribe. Head over to the Patreon at patreon.com/backcountrysober. Go and experiment with the sobriety app betterwithoutbooze.me. And as always, good luck out there.